Hey guys, we have this 2010 Honda CR-V here. We're going to be doing front and rear brakes on it. Some of the tools that you're going to need: 19mm socket to get the wheel nuts off, and 14mm socket to get the brake caliper off. The bolts that hold the bracket for the brake pads are a 19, and then in the back the caliper bolts are 12 and the bracket bolts are 17. So let's start by removing these wheels and we'll get into it. Olsa tools, they make all kinds of good price sockets and whatnot, so check them out. All right, so we'll start here. We'll remove these back brakes, 12mm socket. And then you can take the brake caliper off. Now these ones are a bit unique because the inner brake pad actually has 3 fingers on it, and those fingers go inside of the brake caliper piston. And sometimes if this pad is seized in the bracket and it won't come out, you're gonna have a really tough time getting the brake caliper off because that pad will not come out. So just have patience, maybe use a little pry bar or a big flathead screwdriver and just work away at it. But once we get that out, we can then go ahead and switch up our socket to a 17. And we're gonna go ahead, take this bracket off. There we go. Just make sure your slider pins are free. You can see all the rust that's built up around there. That's really not good. I'm surprised these slider pins are actually free. Once the rust builds up and compromises the seal between the rubber boot and the inside of where that pin goes, they usually rust solid. And then once they stick and don't slide anymore, they have a tendency to wear just the inside brake pad, because the caliper can no longer float and use the outside brake pad, so you'll go through brakes twice as fast, and we don't want that. So these clips, if you're replacing the rotors and the pads, your brake pads should come with clips. If you bought really cheap brake pads, you might not get those clips, so don't completely mangle those yet unless you know you have them. And you can see just all the rust that's on this bracket. We need to clean all that off. Where the pads sit in here, we need to make sure we get all of the rust off of there, because the rust grows, it constricts the brake pads, and the brake pad is then not able to slide back and forth like it's supposed to, which is crucial. So we're gonna get all the rust off, clean this thing up. Now, if you want to take the disc off, these have emergency brake shoes that are inside of this disc. So that's why they give you this little rubber cover here. This thing comes off.
Only the rear, right?
Only on the rear, yeah. So they're your parking brake, emergency brakes, whatever you want to call them. Now, there's an adjuster that's in behind here. There's a little hole, pop this thing off, and you have to turn the adjuster one way to make the shoes retract back inwards. And that'll give us enough clearance to get these discs off. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try to take this off first before I do that and see if it just comes off. And we can either use a hammer. Seeing as these are getting replaced, I don't really care because they're scrap. So you can hammer on the back of this part of the disc. if you're going to reuse them, I recommend using these threaded bolt holes where you can just put a bolt in there and run them down one at a time back and forth, and it should help walk that disc off of the hub. So another spot that you can hammer too is just in between these studs on here. Just got to really watch you don't label one of the studs, or otherwise you're going to have a really bad day. So I'm going to get a hammer and we'll see if we can knock this thing loose. All right. Well, luckily, there wasn't much of a rust ridge in here, but right here is where the shoes don't really contact, that little bit of an edge on there. So you get a lot of rust that'll build up there eventually. And what ends up happening is it'll sort of grow in behind the shoe. And sometimes it gets all caught up. So if you're having a really hard time getting this off, you have to back the shoes down. And that adjuster is right here. It's a little star looking thing. So you can use a flathead screwdriver. You pop this out, and then you can end up just going in through that hole right there and just work with a screwdriver to move that adjuster to get the shoes to back off. And you'll know if you go the right way or not if you adjust it all the way till the adjuster star won't move anymore and the disc is just stuck completely. You know you've engaged the shoes all the way on. So then go the other way until the star won't move anymore and your disc can move freely. Then you know it's back off all the way. So now that I got this off, what I'm gonna do is clean up this hub, get all the rust off of here. We want a nice clean surface for our new disc, and we'll get the new disc and put it on. A lot of these discs will come, if they're not a painted disc, they will have some oil on them to protect them from rusting while they sit on the shelf. So get yourself some parts cleaner and wash them off. Just the mating surface there, very important. Otherwise that oil that's on there will contaminate your brake pads. It could cause chattering, squealing, all kinds of stuff that's not good. So nice and clean, that's prepped and ready to go on. I'm gonna show you the tools that I use as a professional to clean this hub, and also give you some tips on what you could use at home if you're doing this in your driveway. All right, so this is a little roll-lock disc. 3M makes these. You can also get them aftermarket. They're pretty cheap, and you just get this attachment here. You can put it on a drill as well, and it just screws on like that. It's like Scotch-Brite. It's really aggressive, but it's not aggressive, like it won't really take the metal off, so that's what we want. And there's also another attachment like this, but it's got a hole in the center. That's for getting around the studs so that we can clean the entire hub. And also I use a wire wheel as well. It's like a cup brush. So there's many different sizes of these. You can actually get like a wire wheel as well. And yeah, so name of the game here is just get all the rust off. So if you're doing this at home, I'd probably look at getting one of these. You can buy them on Amazon for pretty cheap, and usually it comes in a kit with like a bunch of different roll-off cookies. And you could also just use like a flathead screwdriver to scrape the rust around here or whatever. So yeah, we're just gonna get to cleaning. Okay, so we've got everything cleaned up here. You can see how the hub's all nice and clean now. Washed everything down with brake cleaner to get all the brake dust and stuff from the shoes and all that rusty dust off. And now I'm going to just put a little bit of copper anti-seize around here. And this is going to help in case you ever need to remove the discs in the future. It really helps keep the rust off and all that stuff. So try not to get any on the wheel studs. We want to keep those clean and dry. And Also, we're gonna put this disc on here now. And now is the time that we need to set up our emergency brake or parking brake shoes. And there's some, so you can see it's just like that. We just walk them on. And this vehicle in particular, there's a certain orientation. You can see there's no threaded holes here. Now, this disc did not have the screws in there, and I forgot to mention that to you. If you go to take the disc off, there's set screws that are usually in there, and they're a Phillips. So you can see the tapered holes there and there. They're a Phillips screw. So I guess JIS maybe. Phillips will probably work, but I don't have any to replace them. They're already gone, so you would just need to make sure those holes line up when you go to put the disc on so that you can start your bolts again if you're going to reuse them. There's our adjuster hole. I'm going to spin this around. We've seen where our star adjuster is. And then before I go ahead and start adjusting, I'm actually just going to throw a nut on here. And that's just going to keep the disc seated against the hub properly and will give us an accurate adjustment for our emergency brake. So I'm just gonna get a flathead screwdriver. We'll set this thing up. So you can hear it when you're making the adjustment. And it may take a while, but you just need to keep going until it stops one way or the other. And I just need to check it. It may be seized. Be a good time to lube and service your emergency brakes if you want. Put a little bit of lube on there. Oh, we're good. Okay, so to retract them inwards, you're gonna want to move the star downwards like that. And then if you want to expand them, you're gonna wanna bring the star upwards, going this way. And this is on the driver's side rear. So. Okay, I can feel we are tight now. Emergency brake is completely engaged. We're gonna go back and we're gonna go back a little bit, just enough to bring the shoes back in because we obviously need them to not be completely locked. And you can see we're dragging a little bit. We wanna go back a bit more. And that'll be pretty good there. Just enough where they're just not dragging. If you want to do a better fine-tune adjustment to really dial in your emergency brakes, you can, once you get the discs on both sides and everything, you can actually apply and take the emergency brake on and off a bunch of times. And that's going to allow the shoes to actually settle in place. And then you should be able to fine-tune it just perfect. So. Now that we've got that set up, I'm going to put the rubber plug in there, and we're going to go ahead and move on to cleaning this bracket and getting these pins all cleaned up so that we can get this on and put our pads on. Okay, so normally I sandblast these, but what you can use is just like a small hammer to knock all the rust off if it's got a lot of rust scale, or a wire brush or a wire wheel on a drill would work really good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and knock the rust off of this and then grab my drill with a wire brush and clean up just the spots there where the pads seat against, and also around here where the rubber seals on the slider pin. we just want to get those main spots cleaned up. So. All right, we wanted something like that that's like, you know, decently clean there. Okay, once you get that stuff cleaned off, the next thing I want you to do is go ahead and work on these slider pin bores. So these pins actually slide in and out of this hole, and it's normally supposed to get greased, but like I say, you get a lot of rust that builds up in there. And it's absolutely crucial that these are free and able to slide back and forth. So what I like to use is a little bit of parts cleaner or brake cleaner. And I've got these wire brushes that are just a drill attachment, and they're cheap. You can buy a set of them on Amazon or wherever. And I'll spray a little bit of brake clean in there. And then I'll just go in with this thing. And it gets all the gunk and stuff, cleans up the inside walls of that bore. And then I'll follow it up with some brake clean and some compressed air and blow it out. And I'll go and do that a couple times and get that nice and clean. And you'll also notice that the hole is kind of stepped. And that first step of the hole is actually where the slider pin rubbers seal against. So there's a little end there that sits in that groove. And we want that to seat in there nicely. We want to get all the rust out so we can make a nice seal to make sure that the lube stays in and that all the moisture stays out so that our brakes function really good and last a long time. Okay, we've got the rubbers now that we're going to deal with because we got our pins all cleaned up nice. And well, what you can do is use a bit of brake cleaner and just wash them out and clean them up all nice. I recommend wearing gloves, by the way, but if you want, if they're like either torn or in really bad condition like these ones, you can actually buy a kit that comes with new rubbers in a bag, which is fantastic. So if that's better suited, go ahead and get some of those. And yeah, I'm just going to tidy these ones up and show you that even though they look pretty crappy and they don't have any holes in them or anything, but they're just like really dirty. So I'm just going to wash them up with some brake cleaner, and I'll blow them off with compressed air, and they should look not bad. There you go, you can see they're all cleaned up now. You can tell the difference, like this one between those two, this one looks really swollen, and there's a reason for that. And that's because the lubricant that was used in the slider pins was not a silicone-based lubricant. And there's two different kinds of lubes that you can get. This stuff, it's silicone-based lube made by Clean Flow, or a lot of guys use anti-seize, which don't use anti-seize. It's petroleum-based, so it'll swell rubber and it causes things to seize up, and it's really not good. So I'll grab that and show you. So I'm just putting a little bit of this synthetic dielectric grease. It's also a brake lubricant as well, but this is the stuff I was talking about, Easy Slide. It's a synthetic, or a silicone-based grease, silicone. That's the key. Don't use anti-seize. It's gonna give you issues down the road. So use a little bit of that, and I'm just gonna put this pin in there. It slides really nice, it feels good, everything's nice and clean. That's the way we want it. And then I'm just gonna try to put this rubber in here. And put this on. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of grease right in there too, because that's the other part that's going to seal around the rubber, is the end of the pin there. So we want to make sure it's all sealed up. And, it should fit in there, which it does. Okay. Perfect. Now, don't put a whole lot of grease in there. If you like fill that tube up with grease, the pin won't go in. It'll almost like hydro lock. And it can also cause a thing where there'll be an air pocket built up behind the pin, and it'll keep trying to push the pin out all the time. It'll want to keep the pin like that, and we don't want that. So make sure that you don't put a whole lot of grease in there. Otherwise, what's going to happen, the pins are going to want to push out all the time. You have all your brakes together. It's going to want to keep the caliper applied going this way, and it'll wear the outside pad out on you prematurely. So just a little bit of grease. Okay, so now we're done with the pins. Next thing we want to do is prep the surface and install our shims. So what we want to do here, we've got our nice clean metal. I'm going to use this. It's Honey Goo. It's another product by Clean Flow. You could also use anti-seize if you want, or even that dielectric grease, brake grease, something to save the metal from getting rusty. And I'm just sort of putting it on around the area, and then we can go ahead and put our clip or our shim on. That just sits in there like that. And I'm just going to spray a little bit more over that surface so that it's nice and slippery for the pads. And we're ready to install our bracket onto the car now. So let's go over there and do that. Okay, so we got our bracket. We just started the bolts, and we're going to torque the 17 millimeter bolts that hold the bracket to 80 foot-pounds. Oops, I grabbed the wrong socket. That's okay. And now we're ready to get our brake pads, and we'll prep those up. We'll install those, and we'll get our caliper on. Before we do though, now's the time. I think I'm just gonna knock off some of this rust that's on this brake caliper. It's looking pretty sad. So I'm just gonna clean that up a little bit. You'll notice there's this cage looking thing that's in here. That piece comes out, and there's actually new ones that we got with our brake pads. So we're gonna knock this thing out. It goes that way. We pull it out like that. And once I get this all cleaned up, we'll go ahead and install our new one before we put it on. Okay, so we've got our brake caliper cleaned up. Now we're gonna install this thing. They're symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way it goes. And you just push the old one out that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this. It just sits in there like that. And the reason for this piece here is it keeps tension on the brake pads, pushing them against the cradle or the brake pad holder. You can see we've got a ledge here for the brake pads to butt up against, but there's no ledge on the other side, so the brake pads could come backwards, and that's the reason why that spring is there. So now we've got that installed. We're going to use a little bit of anti-seize and place that in a couple areas. This is your inside brake pad, and I like to just put a little bit on these ends right there, and also kind of just around the base of that where the cup or piston of the brake caliper is going to sit. And at this time we would push our brake piston back. You could use like channel lock pliers. There's also like a push back tool that you could use. So I'm going to actually just gonna probably go grab that. See if I can actually get that in. old ones, the fingers were all rotten, so it came out nice, but I gotta go push that back. Okay, we're pushed back all the way. It's going to put up a little bit of a fight going in. It's compressing those 3 fingers while it goes into the piston. You've also got to fight against this spring that we just put in up there as well. So
yeah, the spring's cocked.
Oh yeah, nice. It's sick. I gotta get a screwdriver to pry that. All right, so I guess the trick kind of is to watch, like you want these ears on the end to be balanced along these lines here. Because if the ear gets into like this spot in here, it'll grab it and pull it, and then that thing pops out and puts up a fight. So we got, that's good now. We got our outside pad. I'm just gonna put a little bit on there and on there. And I'm actually just going to set this in its home. Like that. I put a little bit here where the ears are gonna sit. And I'll go ahead and set that on there. Just like that. Grab our bolts, we're gonna put those in now. You may have to push on the caliper a little bit to overcome the spring pressure of that awesome spring that we just put in. Once we get these started, we're gonna go ahead and torque those down to 17 foot-pounds. They're also a 12mm bolt, by the way. Okay, so we got these slim wrenches from Olsa Tools, and they're beautiful for getting onto those slider pins there. You can see how they're really skinny, so a regular wrench sometimes won't fit. In this case though, for this Honda, you could use a regular wrench. A lot of those slider pins have like a ledge to them where a regular wrench will not fit, so you need a skinny wrench. So that's what I use. We torque these down, 17 foot-pounds, they're good to go. And now we can take this nut off. I just have to stick that rubber plug back into that hole. I won't forget that. And then we can stick our wheel on. Okay, so before we put this wheel on, it's very important to clean the back of the hub, this mating surface here on the rim. We want to make sure that that's nice and clean and flush so that everything sits nice and we don't have any wheel vibrations or anything like that. And most importantly, if you leave a bunch of crap on there, there's a good chance that as it settles when you drive for the next 100 kilometers, the wheel nuts may come loose. So very important to make sure that's clean. Also, I put a little bit of anti-seize just around here, and that's just gonna help the wheel from not getting stuck from corrosion and rust and all that stuff. So before we just stick this on here, just give the disc a little wipe. You can see we've got just a little bit of stuff that's on there. Make sure everything's clean. Make sure our wheel studs are clean. We don't have a bunch of lube on those. They need to be clean and dry. Just gonna spin this around, give the backside a wipe, and we're good to install this onto the vehicle now. We'll grab our wheel nuts. We're gonna hand start the wheel nuts, and then we will tighten them down in a 5-star pattern, finishing them off at 100 foot-pounds. I was too lazy to go get like a normal socket, so I was using the swivel from Olsa Tools. It's really versatile. You can use it pretty much anywhere on the vehicle. So if you want some affordable tools, go to olsatools.com, check it out. Tech 28 for a 5% discount on your first purchase.